All right. Hi, I'm Andrea Thompson, the founder and director of the Film Girl Film Festival, and I'm here with four of the lovely directors from our comedy shorts block. So thank you for joining me all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. To start, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of introduce yourself and kind of give a brief synopsis of your film. Erica, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Erica Ortiz, and I am the director of The Tampon. And The Tampon is a dark comedy about consent. And it starts when our lead actress, Matisse, finds her tampon on the ground after a night of heavy drinking. And she's inspired to create art from that. And she has this conversation with her teacher. And her teacher asks her if this project is about consent. And that leads her down a journey of discovering that the night that she encountered with this young adult man, it was not consented. So that's where our story goes.
Yeah, heavy stuff, for comedy. Yes. And Jesse, why don't we start with what we do you next? And we seem to have lost Maddie. I'll try and correct that.
My name is Jessie Conweiler, and I'm the writer, director, and star of He's the One. And very similar to Erica, my film also deals with, it's a dark comedy, and it deals with consent and sex, and it's about a girl that, I call it like the Tinder date from hell. Mm-hmm. And yeah. That's it.
Right, and Gretel?
Hi, I'm Gretel Claggett, and I'm the creator, writer, and director of Storm Chaser, which is also a dark comedy, a dramedy, satire, allegory. And it's about a woman. We meet Bonnie Blue first as a teen, and all she ever really wanted to do was chase tornadoes with her dad because she felt very connected to Mother Nature. And then years later, we meet her in midlife, and she's up against a recession and down on her luck. And she is now a different kind of storm chaser, basically hawking roofing, siding, and storm doors door to door for a shady outfit called Flip Siding that is run by this guy who might remind you of a leader or two on the world stage today. His name is Flip Smith. And he preaches disaster capitalism, so predatory capitalism, closing the sale at any cost. So long story short, there's an inner metaphorical storm and, of course, a storm that's approaching, and Bonnie is forced to make a moral decision. Will she stand up and do the right thing or go for the money, basically? Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of sex in it, but there's a little romance.
Yeah, there's a nice romance, actually.
Thank you.
Real ray of light.
Yes.
And last but not least, Maddie.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm the director of Go for Elena, which is about third AD Elena on the set of a Basic Instinct reboot. And it's all about her trying to overcome the hierarchy of production to really just get her own film made when she's pit against another woman on set whose really misguided fight for equality ends up sort of butting heads with Elena.
Mm-hmm. Now, it really struck me watching your films and listening to all of you describe them. I was really reminded that, they're comedy shorts, and all of them are very funny in their own very unique ways. But they also really delve into some pretty dark territory. All of them do, and it really strikes me how comedy is such a genre that can help us explore that. We laugh through our tears, as it were. So, can you tell me why you all decided to choose comedy to delve into these topics? And why do you think comedy is such a good genre to do that in? Yeah. Whoever wants to.
Should we just jump in?
Yeah, basically.
So I guess I've gone through a lot of tough stuff in my life. And one of the things that has helped me to get through it is to laugh and to be able to find the humor in the most absurd or tragic circumstances, which doesn't mean that that we don't feel those things. But I really firmly believe that when dealing with really tough topics, that it is easier if, life isn't just all heavy, heavy, heavy. And it doesn't mean that things can't work as dramas without laughter. But I love playing with genre. And I think especially Storm Chaser really does deal with a lot of issues that need to be solved, socio-political issues that need attention and to be solved. So rather than kind of hitting people over the head, even though something like that metaphorically happens in the film, I wanted to really play with dark humor and with nuance, because I think that maybe that then opens people's minds to be able to see and feel things differently. And it's also just a lot of fun to do in terms of creating and writing. But I guess that's why I approached this material that way, because I felt that it would be more palatable for a wider audience and hopefully not as polarizing as it could be if it were just, on the nose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in.
Definitely.
I feel like I get this question like on every panel, like I'm sure we all do. Like, love you, Andrea, but like this is the question,
Yep,
And,
it really is.
It really is, and I think it's so funny because we're all at the very like end stages of birth, of labor and delivery, and like looking at my baby now, I'm just kind of like, I don't really think about, I'm going to make something that's dark, but also use comedy. And I love the audience, but I don't really think about the audience, especially when I'm making something that I'm financing myself. That's a passion project that I had to make this movie. It wasn't like a choice. And so, for me, my own personal experience, like the film is about a girl that meets the man of her dreams on Tinder and then realizes and falls in love and is like, this is my husband, even though I don't know his last name. And then realizes like, holy shit, this guy raped me 10 years ago. Or I think this is the guy that raped me 10 years ago. And to me, like, maybe I'm just like super fucked up, but I think that's hilarious. All I want is love. And it's like, great, I finally met him. And like, and thinking, and when I had that idea, I was like, well, what would I do? Well, all couples have baggage, and just started thinking about it, and it's obviously like really sad, but it's also hilarious, and just like being in that kind of a pickle to me is just, it's so funny, and so and to me that's my favorite kind of comedy. Like I thought Parasite was hilarious. It was so dark, but it was so hilarious, and so I think. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what everyone else thinks, but I don't go into it going like, and it's going to be a comedy. Like I just kind of try to tell the truth.
Yeah. A kind of, this could only happen to me kind of thing. You're choosing to take that route to whatever trauma you have in your life. I think it can be, sometimes that's a good coping method I've found too. Maddie, Erica?
You can go.
Okay. For me, when Matisse had approached me with the script, I read it and I just really wanted to focus on the truth and the experience of what this character experienced. And through her lens, she saw things in a certain way that was very lighthearted and slightly naive. And I just wanted to show the truth. So it wasn't like, I wasn't going in like, I want to make people laugh. Like this is just the way that this character viewed the world. And I wanted to try to capture that as honestly as possible.
Yeah, the character definitely, partly because it was so common just talking to her friends.
Yes.
That kind of thing just happened, those gray areas, as it were.
Well, and I think
first I'd like to hear from Maddie, I think.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to chime in one point in terms of, I don't think that you go in being intentionally funny, because we all know that if you're playing for comedy, that doesn't work. So I think it is about, telling the truth in all of its shades of tragedy and comedy, or however it lands.
Telling the truth as much as you can, as you see it. as much as the truth can be told in certain situations.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm saying something quite controversial now. I think talking to Anna, who is our producer and writer on Go for Elena, we very much went into it wanting to make a comedy, because I think it's our opinion that, like a taboo subject like feminism, it's not always easy to kind of approach that conversation. And I think if you can really just make people laugh, then you can make them listen. And that was quite a big thing for us, just thinking, you know, we want people to come and think, oh, it's okay, like we can laugh at this because it's a ridiculous situation. But really just go away later and kind of think it over. Because at the end of the day, you know, feminism, it is a bit intimidating, but it's about equality and it should be bringing people together. And there's this ridiculous notion, I suppose, that the biggest myth in anti-feminist propaganda is that wanting to be funny and wanting equality are somehow mutually exclusive, and I don't think they are. So that was something we were quite conscious of going into this.
But yeah, that brings up an interesting question. As do you think like feminism is kind of like still controversial right now?
Me? So,
yeah, okay. I guess I'd like to take your answer and then get everyone else's take on that.
I think in a way it is. I suppose feminism is one of those things where every wave kind of reflects the current society as a whole. So I think for us, with, you know, we're in an age where we see a celebrity that's a feminist who might not maybe completely understand what that means, and will take, you know, a very performative stance, and it's very easy to kind of mimic that without actually understanding where feminism comes from. That was my own kind of experience. I did, admittedly, at the start of this, have to go away and kind of research, like, okay, well, you know, what really is feminism? Because I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was quite ignorant, maybe more than I should have been going into this. So I think it's easy to do. You really have to want to know about it to really, I guess, benefit from it in the ways that we should, rather than the ways that are maybe advertised to us.
I guess if you're privileged in a certain way, like certain inequalities might be far easier for us to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes also I think realizing that there is a problem. For me personally, I think I come from a technical background in film, so I was working in a very, you know, it's a very male-dominated environment, and I maybe wasn't aware there was such a problem before stepping into it as when I kind of transitioned to directing. It's nice now to be able to talk about it a bit more, because I don't think I was expecting it at the start of my career. And I guess that's kind of more like a systemic sexism issue, but I do think that also relates obviously to feminism. Mm-hmm.
And for the rest of you, do you think, because I also think each of your films is, even if it wasn't intended, I don't think any of you probably went into your films, I'm going to make a feminist film, but simply putting a woman at the center of your film and experiences is still feminist, because you really, from an outsider, critic perspective, that seems to be really a feminist thing to do because it's still too rare. So do you guys, to the rest of you, like Jessie, I'd like your opinion on, do you think feminism is still a controversial thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's almost worse, more of a dirty word now, because people are like, what? We did it. Like, I have the shirt, you know? And I think something that's happened that's pretty cool in the past couple of years, like this, you know, first of all, like the reckoning with like race within feminism. And also like, my thing that I looked at with He's the One, and like my torch to bear that I'm always saying is like, dude, patriarchy is shitty for everyone. Patriarchy, just like racism is shitty for white people, patriarchy is shitty for men. And something that I'm trying to show in He's the One, I guess, like inadvertently, is like, and I don't think I got to do the full spectrum of it in the short, but trying to say like, you know, these things about consent and like this reckoning that we're having with sexual, you know, with consent and all that shit is just like, it is bad for men too. And not to say like men are the victims, but like both people get hurt in the situation. And so I'm trying to, you know, take the Me Too conversation and make us face each other. Like instead of turning away from each other, men are over here saying, oh, Me Too's gone too far. And women are saying, fuck men. Trust me, I feel that way too. but like I want for me and for my work to really support this idea of like having these hard conversations, because unfortunately I love men. I love being with men. I love having sex with men. It is my burden to bear. And in order to move forward, I feel like we all need to be together, and men need to realize like this shit, feminism is good for me too.
Mm-hmm. Pun not intended.
I'm into that too. When I was speaking with Matisse as we were prepping to film our film, she's the writer, we talked in depth about how we want to create this experience for the male protagonist and a female protagonist to have a conversation. And it's not like you're the one to blame or you're the one to blame. It's just opening a dialogue and not pointing fingers. And I feel like that is where we can begin to change things, is when we open up to each other and have compassion and learn that we are having a human experience. And I know that there are injustices, but how can we better understand each other and communicate to move forward instead of just digressing and moving backwards? So I really relate to what Jessie said as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And Gretel?
Yeah, I totally agree. I one of the things that I also strive for is to catalyze a conversation and to not, I firmly believe that as a creator, writer, anything, I have all things within me. So I have my antagonist within me. I have the protagonist within me. As a woman of a certain age, I have throughout my career been in a lot of boys clubs. And so, within Storm Chaser, it was really important for me to show, there is a certain toxic masculinity that is shown. And then there is a moment where a man maybe doesn't step up and do the right thing. And yet it's funny because I actually did, in the process of developing it, have a couple of people, a couple of women say to me, well, why do you have not to have spoilers, but why do you have the ending be what it is? Why not just show her that she's made this decision and that she doesn't need a man and she'll, forge ahead. But I thought it was very important to show that men and women do need each other and that they can come together and that there are men who uphold women, right? Because I think we need more of that. And even if a man makes a mistake and doesn't maybe take a stand, he can still have a second chance to do the right thing, to take a stand on behalf of a woman. Because I don't think that these things are human issues. I prefer humanism to feminism just because of there's so many bad connotations now with feminism or misunderstandings. And hopefully we'll get to a place where it's not just like female filmmakers and, that we're all filmmakers or we're all artists, but we're not there yet. We're not there. We're still in the labeling.
Yeah, I noticed that each of your films, even though you and your protagonists all struggle with this kind of toxic masculinity that they'd have to deal with, but they're very, and even though they get hurt, they manage to find the compassion within themselves to not kind of turn into a hateful person themselves. So in your own lives, because I assume, we're all seen as like female creatives first. I've encountered that in my writing career a ton of times, which is partly why I started this. But in your career, like, how do you basically keep yourselves sane, frankly, when you encounter a lot of this stuff? Erica, why don't we start with you? I'm pretty sure you're right.
When you said that, how do I keep myself sane? I try to keep the focus inward and like really think about the mission of like why I became a creator to begin with. And for me, it just goes beyond how I'm looked at from the outsider perspective. I want to create and inspire a deep change within our world where women and people of color are seen as equal. And I just keep my focus on that. And whenever I am met with something that makes me feel like, less than or not good enough, I I let that thought go, and
Mhm.
I refocus on what my mission is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gretel?
That was very well said, Erica. I'm 100% with you. I think that that's we have to. I try to create without attachment and to stay on course with the vision and the mission. And we never know how our babies, so to speak, will be met in the world. And so I think the most important thing is to keep creating and to have that clear vision and mission to feed you. So that's what I do as well. And sure, there are bad days, and then you brush yourself off and keep going. And I believe all those things actually do help to make us stronger, because sometimes you can get a reflection back that you realize, oh, wait, I have internalized this. I do this to myself. Let me stop that and, get in touch with like divine feminine, whatever you want to call it, your creative source. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how a project, a piece of writing, a film is received, if you know that you've stayed on point and you've done the best you can do in creating that, and that your intention is true, then that's really what feeds your soul, feeds my soul, I should say. So yeah, it's very inspiring to talk about these things with like-minded creators.
Mm-hmm. And yes, familiar with that particular coping method too. Maddie?
I think you guys kind of covered it beautifully. I don't know how much more I could add other than, I guess, just having a support system. And I think having sort of a community of people in the same work as you, maybe in different fields, but just in the same industry, just so we can kind of help each other out. I think that is worth its weight in gold.
Mm-hmm. And Jessie?
Yeah, kind of like everyone said, it always kind of blows my mind, because directing and writing is quite solitary in the day-to-day of it. And so you're like, I'm the only one that like feels stressed out, or like I should move back to my parents' basement or whatever. So it's like so nice to hear you guys talk. And I think I just like, it's like cheesy, but like I just played dress up in my room till I was like 18 years old. Like I just have all these, like those are like my happiest memories of childhood, just like creating these worlds. And I love the work. I really love the work. And I hate the business. I really hate certain aspects of the business. And I had a call yesterday. I was under my covers at like 1 p.m. just like, whoa, I made like, but it's as good as it is bad, And so I think like all of us, like we're the real deal. Like what makes us the real deal is that we love the work. And I just will never forget the first time I went to Sundance. I was just like, okay, cool. I've been like, I made it to the top of the mountain. I've been waiting for this my entire life. And I've like honestly never been so depressed, because I was just like, wait, this is it? Like, this is what I just want to like go back on set. And so I think it's like when you get into that headspace and I haven't sold anything or whatever, everyone else has their deadline announcement that they're posting and whatever, and just being like, okay, this is the bullshit part that I hate, but just going back to like what everyone said, like I just want to go scout a location, do a mood board, I love the work, and that's what sustains, I think.
That's a good segue into my next question, which is what made you guys decide to want to do this work in the first place? Erica, why don't we start with you?
Sure. There's so many reasons why. As a teenage girl, I would carry around just like a home video camera, and I would film my friends at parties, just like having fun, teenage debauchery. I didn't realize till later that I could actually make a career out of it. And there's just a deep love for cinema. I grew up actually in a home that weirdly didn't have cable, so I just watched movie after movie after movie. And I fell in love with storytelling and filmmaking. And when I I was in junior college and asked to do a public speaking assignment. And I was really interested in talking about representation in film. And then I come to realize that, oh, they need, I'm Mexican and American. Hollywood needs me to create stories that represent my community and minorities. So I was like, here I am. I'm going to do it. Yeah.
And Gretel? Yeah, by the way, can't argue with that Hollywood needs Mexican Americans. Sorry, Gretel, go on.
Absolutely. Well, I started acting when I was 7 in professional summer stock, and it, really saved my life in many ways because I have a history of trauma, and that was a place where I could, I guess, speak my truth when I felt that I couldn't in my real life. But I just love the craft of it. I love the collaboration. So I grew up doing theater, and my dad actually collected 16 millimeter films. So I also grew up watching like all of the, golden age movies, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've done a lot of different things in my career, but I guess I've always been, I've always been telling stories. And so I came into filmmaking later. Essentially, it was something where a door closed on a book I was trying to publish. And so I decided I'm also a poet, and there was a poem that I would read called Happy Hour that people would always respond to. And so when a number of doors closed, because it was kind of like the topic was too hot to touch at the time, and, I decided to make a film. And I really found with writing and directing film that I got to combine all of my passions. And so, and I haven't looked back since. So that was like in 2012. So it was a circuitous route, but really it's always been about telling stories and telling stories that have some sort of social justice or political, something, because my intention too, as I think everyone on this panel, is to make a difference in the world in some small way, to bridge that gap. Yeah.
Yeah, and Maddie?
I think I've always loved the escapism of film. I grew up watching films. I was always reading. And I think it's that when you read something and you can just see it come alive in your head, and there's just something that's so exciting, and then kind of realizing that through film you can show people that, and that I don't think there's anything as incredible as that in the world. This is just this magical thing. Think about, it's insane, and I love it, and it's such a rush. And I think when you meet people that you can collaborate with who see the same world that you do, and you can bring it to life together, it's kind of like a drug. But yeah, it's magical.
And watching it really is no less when you see the pieces of a film all come together, and it's so easy for one thing to go wrong. So yes, when you see it from the outside, it's also magical, like a drug. There's a reason people return to their favorite films over and over again. Jessie?
I think of it more like an abusive boyfriend. I'm like, why do I do that? I cannot leave. But I had I didn't want to go to film school. I knew I wanted to do film, but I toured some film schools, and I was just like, I just remember like these dark rooms, and there was just like a bunch of white guys, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. I want to take drugs. I want to learn stuff, whatever. So I went to this kind of hippy dippy school where you could like design your own major. And so for my senior thesis, I was studying sociology, and I was living in Redlands, which is like, it's right off the 10, and it's like a huge trucking hub. And so I was like, I just want to make who are these guys in these trucks? And I want to make a documentary about truck drivers. And so I would like hitchhike with truck drivers, hang out at the truck stop with my camera, my little Sony HD, whatever. And I was like, I just have a very visceral memory of like being at the truck stop at 3 a.m. I was like interviewing the sex worker, and I was just like, I am so happy. Like I am in the flow of like whatever the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I'm just, this is my purpose. I'm so happy. And that's just like, that's been it for me, you know, just following that feeling.
We all relate too much to that high you get when you're, I think, when you're like staying up, almost no sleep, but you're getting everything, but everything's coming together, definitely. And I feel that's a good way to kind of uplift the situation, to say like, what is your, well, to uplift the situation even more, our chat. What is your favorite part about what you do? What do you love most about it? Erica?
Oh my gosh. Excuse me. That is such a hard question. There's so many things I love about it. I just, to be on set and to work with actors is my favorite, and to create the world. Like, I will obsess about it endlessly, and I will not sleep at all. And I will just be so happy creating things. And it happens when I'm writing, when I'm on set, when I'm preparing. For me, for some reason, tapping into the truth of something and having another human being experience that truth with you, and then having behind the scenes, like the crew experience the truth as well, and like being moved. I think that for me is my favorite part, is to be moved. I want to feel something. I want something to shift within me or others, and to witness that within my actors or a crew member who's like holding, you know, a boom mic. Like that's the goal for me, and that's what I love. I love it so much. Yeah.
And Gretel?
It is a very tough, that's a very tough question to answer, because I think, especially as, you know, when you're writing and directing and shepherding it from the blank page all the way through post, there are different, and I can really relate with Jesse's comment about the abusive boyfriend though too, because there are times where you're like, why am I doing this to myself? Because it's not for the faint of heart. And there are days where it's like, oh my goodness. But I would say, I mean, I love all of it. I started as an actress, so I really love working with actors. I think for me though, I guess it's the process of discovery along the way. And I love being in post-production and really having surprises there and creating and recreating the story there. I mean, I firmly believe that it all has to be on the page before you go in. You know, you need that strong story. But then I think the real, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's like a high when you can hold a vision, but yet be open enough to allow the story to become even better or slightly different without losing the vision. You know, those surprises that happen and can happen all the way into post, and the problem solving, because there are always problems to be solved. And then, you know, going through, I mean, as Eric was saying, you know, I think it's all creation. I mean, you're just constantly creating and recreating. So that's, you know, I think, I don't know of another art form that allows you to do that. Certainly with writing, you're revising. I mean, you know, all of writing is rewriting, as they say, but it's different because that's more of a solitary, generally, unless you have an editor, of course, but it's so collaborative with film or television that, yeah, I mean, that surprise and just going for that ride, and then hopefully coming to a place where you're like, okay, this is, you know, this is the story.
And Maddie?
I think I'd have to agree. I suppose when you're making film, it's like you've got this intense little Rubik's Cube, and there's always challenges. And just when you think you've got it, something else will come along, but it's always for the best. And I think those small moments when you're on set and you're so prepared, but then, you know, you've got one of those little ideas that pops up where you're kind of like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to try something and see how it goes. And then you see something change, and it just kind of everything works and it's just this thrill. I think that's just amazing. And seeing the whole production, even when it is horribly stressful and you feel like you're about this big at times, I think it's just when you get to places where the idea expands and it grows and it becomes more than you initially thought it could be or expected it to be, it's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, never made a film, but feel the same way when I write something and it just comes out so fantastically. So, Jessie?
Yeah, I think I love filmmaking because it really like feeds every aspect of my personality. I'm like very introverted and I love like getting into my feels and like, you know, I love the writing process and just like getting really precious and like whatever. And then I love being on set and like I feel like you know, just like not like war, but just like the practicality of like, okay, we have 20 minutes. We got to do that. Like, I love and then like also being a mom and like making sure everyone's fun and then being a therapist. And then I love going into the edit and rewriting. And then I love like the mix because you're like, should it be this or this? You know, it's like so minutia detailed, like what kind of shoes should the footsteps be? And so I love the whole process. And I also really love when it's over. Like being like, oh my God, that's so weird. Like just that weird idea I had in my head is like a thing that it's so trippy. And I love when it's over.
You're bringing thoughts of birth to mind, the way you talk about it.
No, so I've never given birth, but I feel like the analogy.
Neither. Yeah, except you have more control over the end result.
Yes, you do, I guess.
Yeah, that's really interesting the way you mentioned like making sure everyone had fun on set, because again, all of your films address these really tough topics. So Jessie, when I ask you that, and we'll go around, how did you keep the mood light on set, especially with your male lead, because I imagine it was really tough for him to play that kind of role.
Yeah, I mean, I really lucked out with Luca. I really felt like he kind of took care of me as much as I took care of him, and he really got the character right away. So when you have an actor like that, I always get like, so I'm like there's a point in directing where you're on set and everything's working, and so you're like, as the director, you're like, wait, what's my fucking job? What should I be doing? Like, and it's like that kind of is your job. Like, if everything's going well, you've kind of done your job, you know. When I don't always act in my stuff, but when I was acting in this, I can't really be as present as I would like. But I really feel like for me, the prep is so much of directing. It's like so much of it. It's like who you're inviting to the party and what you're putting on the menu and the location and like really, really setting yourself up for success. But I think for me, just like, people are mostly doing me favors or working for half their rate or whatever. So I just feel like it's just like we're all doing this for fun. And that's kind of my kind of vibe on set is like, I want it to be play. And that's something that one of my mentors always told me. And that's a piece of advice that's always really stuck. It's like, you can kind of tell on the projects when they're not having fun.
Yeah,
it comes through. So I just think it's really important to create that from the top down because people can feel it.
Definitely. And Maddie?
I feel like what I'm going to say is really cliche, but just good food. There always needs to be good food. It saves every situation. We had a few like little things that went wrong with our production. So on our first day, we all turned up and we'd lost our locations. We had to kind of rejig that. We lost art department about a week before, so that was a little bit stressful. But I think just having everyone come together and kind of like, we all know what we need to do. We're going to get it sorted. It's fine. And having good food.
Mm-hmm. And Gretel?
Yes, good food is important. You know, Storm Chaser was quite challenging on the shoot because we were in remote Vermont. And I won't go into the details of how we landed there, but I learned a lot from being, I mean, literally, we had no cell phones at times, no coverage, which made it very trying. Most of the people came in from outside of Vermont. So it was kind of like a, indie Hollywood film thing. And we also had a lot of horrible weather. So on day 2 of the shoot, I actually pretty much lost a day because we had torrential downpours. There was a tornado that the crew took a video of, a small tornado. I did get the man with the gun scene done, but it put me behind, and I had no way to add on an extra day. So there was overtime. There was, it was a challenging shoot. However, had a great cast, and people were understanding for the most part. There were some conflicts that we had to resolve, I think that people did believe in the material and the film, and so I am proud of what we got, because there were some moments where it felt like, okay, this this is just like, I'm not going to get, we're just not going to get this. We're going to run out of time, money, etc. I will share kind of a little bit of a woo-woo story, but I literally, on our final day of shooting, that was the big chase scene. And there's a train shot, and, and in the film, you can see that the fields are, and I've had some people say, like, how did you get that special effect? Now, granted, the storm itself was composited, the tornado is composited, but we were supposed to, on that final day, have a torrential thunderstorm. And had that happened, I don't know what would have happened. So I literally, the night before, was like praying to my father who had crossed over, to like calling in. And so we shot that with these kind of high winds. And as soon as we wrapped the day and, the shoot, torrential thunderstorm. So I felt like, on the front end of the shoot, I was, the production gods weren't with me. And on the back end of the shoot, they were. And that's one thing in terms of when you're shooting a lot of exteriors and doing it in a really, indie way, obviously. I learned a lot, but it was deeply, deeply challenging. And so I just tried to keep everybody focused on the work and to show up, and I wasn't asking anybody to show up any differently than I was. It's just like, okay, how can we figure this out? Okay, let's forge ahead. Okay, we're going to cut these shots and, simplify the scene. Because I've done a ton of pre-pro, which I'm also, as Jesse said, I mean, pre-pro, that's, that's what saves you when the shit goes down on set.
Sounds like life imitated art a bit too much on your set.
It did. It really did, in many, many ways.
And Erica, how did you keep the mood light? Oh, we can't hear you. You muted yourself.
That's actually never happened to me. First time.
You never forget your first.
Yeah. So I've actually had the luxury of getting to hire my friends on my film. And everyone is just, my friends are great people. They're super talented, lighthearted, very supportive. It was a very nurturing environment. And it honestly felt like a 3-day party. It was really fun. Even during our very heavy moments, our actors, who are now my friends too, they would just, when we would cut, it would just the mood would be light again. And I lit a lot of Palo Santo. I know it's very, but I just believe in, clearing the air, and lots of coffee is very important for me. Sometimes sugar Red Bull, and good food too.
Yes, good food is key.
Yeah.
Now I added, I know I asked this a bit with Jesse before, but As the Me Too movement has gone on, many people have remarked that while we acknowledge how traumatic it can be for women to film really intense scenes like rape scenes or when they're grappling with toxic masculinity, a very good point that's been brought up that we don't consider how often the male actors feel emotionally devastated by having to play this role and act that way with their female co-stars. So, did you guys kind of have an onset reassurance after you kind of filmed these really intense scenes where you kind of took a break and like kind of reassured your lead actors? Erica, why don't we start with you again?
Yes. So luckily, Matisse, Alex, and I, so actually Matisse and Alex were on the show, The Society on Netflix. So they had already created a relationship, a friendship together. So when they brought me on to the project, I could already tell that there was just like trust between them. So they had that, but we had phone calls and also an in-person meeting, just to discuss anything that would arise emotionally. And I just wanted to assure them that if they ever needed to talk about anything or to have a moment offset, to take a breather, that I would, of course, support that and honor their needs first, because that was very, very important to me.
And Gretel?
Well, Stephen Plunkett, who plays Flip Smith, who is an embodiment of toxic masculinity and predatory capitalism, he's a brilliant actor and has become a good friend of mine. And I mean, all of the actors I did a lot of backstory work with, and even the Flipsiders, his kind of group of minions, even though they don't have a lot of screen time and some of them don't even have full-fledged lines, so to speak, they all had backstories, points of view. I mean, the cast is incredible. But with Stephen, one of the things that we really focused on was that, you know, in his mind, you know, I mean, he was always playing the positive. So it was really about he's giving her tough love because that's what's going to be good for her. Or, you know, he never, in terms of the character, he always had a positive intention, which I felt was very important too, because I didn't want a caricature villain, you know, a caricature antagonist. So I think that, you know, yeah, we had a lot of conversations, and there weren't as many because there weren't really, you know, I'm thinking back to my first film, Happy Hour, which deals with pedophilia, and the person who played the
wow, this must have felt so light after that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But you know, the actor who played the uncle, you know, the perpetrator, and the little girl. I mean, that was very sensitive, and obviously, I had to, as a director, you know, that set had a different energy than Storm Chaser, right? And it was challenging for that actor because, but you know, I cast him because he's actually a really great guy with a great heart, and he was willing to take it on. But we did have we had some tough talks. I mean, it was really, it does whole, you know, to embody, because as an actor, you're embodying that energy. I think that's more relevant to your question than Storm Chaser. I know that Stephen had a blast doing Flip Smith, because he was always playing the positive, you know, and I think that, you know, it's like Donald Trump doesn't think that, I mean, he really thinks that he's doing the right thing, I believe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Maddie?
I mean, ours was obviously, you know, it's dealing with intense topics, but, you know, nothing, I think, to, you know, tampon or he's the one. But we did, I suppose, just have that conversation about who Jim is as a person. And he's not just out to be an arse. He's not out to deliberately make somebody unhappy. you know, he's doing what he can, he's trying to support her, but also there's so much pressure on him from, you know, other directions. It's just him maybe mismanaging it, rather than, you know, you don't want someone who, as Gretel says, you don't want just a 2D villain. Everyone's got different sides to their personality and different things they're trying to handle or juggle. So maybe some people just don't manage in the way that they'd like. And I think taking that stance just made things a lot easier.
Jessie?
I was just laughing because I kept saying on set, like when we had to shoot, and it was actually like such a good, one thing that I learned that was like a happy accident was we just ran out of time during the day. We were trying to shoot it all in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, we were like, okay, we have to shoot the flashback, which is the assault scene. My DP was like, we can shoot it at my house. So I was like, okay, cool, we'll shoot it next week. And it winded up being such a blessing in disguise because it was so intense and so heavy. And I think it would have been too much to pack it all in one day. But I'm just laughing because I was like, I'm warning Luke. I'm like, okay, so my safe word, like like telling the whole crew, like if I say Mississippi, like everyone needs to leave the room, you know, whatever. And he's like, well, what's my word? Like you, what about me? And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about you. But I think I really like just knowing the script so well in my bones, I just really like beat out the scene. I was like, okay, so from here to here, seduce me, from here to here, ignore me, from here to here, like really just treating it like any other scene in terms of like choreographing it. And so that was really helpful when we shot, and you know, really like taking care of him as much as possible and just not having expectations that day is really going to be fun, and giving myself some space too, that I really was just like, I really only have 2 takes in me. And it was really, I was very nervous to like set those boundaries for myself because I wanted to be a good director, but just being like, well, that's how I would take care of my actor if the actor wasn't me. And, you know, Luca just being like, just my back is hurting and I can't, you know, just really being like, well, at the end of the day, like trusting that we got enough to get it, that it's not really worth it to me to make myself or my actor uncomfortable. And it's like, we got it, you know? So that was a cool experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of, goes into my next question. Like, this is a big one because like all of your films obviously ask these questions, and you obviously took such care with your actors, the script, the direction, and a lot of the issues you address in your films, we're still learning how to discuss them. A lot of us don't know how to talk about these things. So, and I don't expect you to have all the answers to this, but for people like who aren't filmmakers, who don't have that kind of, as you all mentioned, that therapeutic way to kind of portray and discuss, how do you think we should talk about a lot of the stuff you discuss in your films going forward, like as a public discussion? Like, I'll just leave it there. What do you think is the best way to discuss some of these films in your experience, from your point of view? Because I assume you all had to have these discussions just to make the films you made. Erica, why don't we start with you?
No pressure. I know, I do feel the pressure right now. I feel like, I mean, it's a tough one. I feel like trying to see everyone as a human could help us when we have conversations that are so complex, you know.
It sucks that we still have to say that. Yeah, just see another person as human.
Yeah. Everyone is having a human experience, and, you know, just having, for me, I try to have compassion for everyone, no matter how horrible they may be. You know, everyone was once a child before, and I feel like they've had certain experiences happen to them in life that get them to where they are today. And I feel like having an open mind, and for me, again, I always go inward and think like, what can I do to make like a conversation feel safe enough to actually have a conversation for other people, but also speak my truth and not and not withhold for the sake of making somebody else feel uncomfortable. Yeah, that was a very hard question.
Yeah, I want to address the hard questions here, because because I struggle with that too, and the way I write, how I discuss and how I put this on, like even with other women, other filmmakers, like I'm still struggling with how to best talk about these things that affected me and so many others too.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gretel?
So I guess I'm grappling with what the question is. So you're asking how outside of the storytelling can we talk about these things?
Yeah, have public discussions. Like, how do you proceed in having these difficult discussions? Because I feel like that's when where a lot of the change can come from, is just people like asking and discussing the hard questions with each other.
Right. I mean, I guess part of, I mean, I have done activist work. I guess that's why I tell stories, because I really believe that stories allow us to talk about these things. So in a way that I think that, especially at a time where we're so polarized, and that's why I love narrative storytelling and having a world that's similar but different slightly than our everyday world. So I guess that's always my hope, that, and when I watch things, if I watch a series or something that's really engaging and entertaining, but yet, it's downloading, these points of view. So I guess I don't have really an answer for that question, except that when I approach a conversation, I try my best to approach it in a similar way to how I approach telling a story, in a non-judgmental way. And, that can be very challenging at times, especially if someone doesn't really want to have the conversation. So I think that what it's like, we can all preach to the choir. The choir is going to agree with it. It's how do we bridge that gap where we're talking to someone who's singing a totally different tune, right? That's not part of our choir, that has another choir over there that, so I don't have an answer for that. I guess what my way right now is telling stories. And writing, whether it's an essay or what have you. I think it's a very important question at this time, because we need these conversations desperately right now, whether it's about race, whether it's about sexism, whether it's about predatory capitalism, whether it's about ageism. I mean, there's so many systemic things happening and coming to a head, especially all over the world, but of course we're here in the US. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer. I wish I knew.
Same. I assume we all have our methods, so that's why I'm really curious as to right now, is when it's finally almost permissible to talk about these taboo topics. I'm really curious.
I mean, so. I do, to just kind of put an end on this, that's why I do believe so strongly in storytelling, because I think that storytelling, when done well, can depolarize, because we see the humanity, right? And we're at a place where sides are demonizing each other. So that's why I really do believe in storytelling as a way forward, in terms of bridging some of these gaps.
And Maddie?
Personally, I think just surround yourself with people who have different opinions to you. I found that incredibly helpful. This was our graduation film, Go for Elena. So I think we were so lucky that we had such a diverse team. We were all from different places. We'd grown up in different countries. We all had such different, I guess, experiences, even of, talking about the film industry, how it's, the same as a whole, but everyone has different kind of experiences going into that and at different levels. And I think just listening to other people. If someone has an opinion you don't agree with, maybe just take a minute to ask yourself why you don't agree with it and what it is that's kind of irking you. Because sometimes, you know, it's actually something that we need to go away and think about ourselves as to how we improve, because no one should have to ask us to. I think it's just being curious and being open to other people.
Mm-hmm. And Jessie?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to not have conversations online.
Yeah.
I think social media is like awesome for just the icing on the cake or the byline or whatever, getting news out quick, but to really have like the in-depth conversations, because I notice it with myself, like I'll have a feeling about something and be like, okay, I need to share my take, and like I need to pick a side and I need to say what the opinion is on this thing, and it's like I don't. A, and B, like most of the time I'll talk to people and I'm like, oh, we're like really saying the same thing and there's shades to this, or we're not saying the same thing, but I see your humanity and like it's helping me have a different perspective. And I really just think you have to have the conversations offline. I mean, I think it was really cool. It was really cool getting to go to a couple screenings of He's the One, because like come up to me and be like, I liked that. I don't know why, but that moved me, you know? And I'm like, yeah, cool. It's not a tweet, you know, it's like a feeling. And so.
Definitely. That's a really good point. And looks like we've used up our allotted hour, but I also want to take time to hear what's next for you ladies. Jessie, why don't you kick it off? What's next for you?
I'm developing He's the One into a TV show, which is exciting. Working on a new feature. Sorry?
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It'll probably take 18 years for it to get developed.
Optimism, I like it.
And then I shot a new short that's on Hulu right now. It's actually a thriller comedy, which is really fun to shoot something kind of genre. And yeah, I'm just doing my thing.
And Maddie?
I'm working on a feature with Anna again. So yeah, very exciting.
With who?
Well.
A feature with who?
Oh, with Anna. So Anna Costellas was the writer, the writer and producer.
Yes.
Many hats in this and in it as well. So
nice. Yeah. Congrats also.
Thanks.
And Gretel?
I have been developing an episodic anthology, kind of spinning off from Storm Chaser, about disaster capitalism. And then I have two other projects. I have a memoir project and I have two other projects that one I think is a feature and the other one long form narrative series. So yeah, just, writing, developing, doing my thing as well.
Awesome. And Erica?
I just completed writing a feature film about a young Mexican-American girl who is pressured to embody Eurocentric beauty standards by her modeling agency, and she begins to use drugs to lose weight. And I'm just finished writing it, so I'm looking forward to pitching that and hopefully making it within the next year or two.
Nice. Good luck. Thank you. And it looks like that's probably to be the end of our time. So I want to thank you all for allowing your film to screen in the Film Girl Film Festival and for joining me here and talking about all of these difficult questions I asked. Thank you for talking with me about them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Congrats, everybody.
Yes, congratulations. Wonderful to meet you all.
Nice
Wonderful to meet you all too.
too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.